The best evidence indicates that the first settlers in Colombia arrived 25,000 years ago, after first crossing the Bering Straits, coming down through North and Central America, and probably being joined by others that arrived in papyrus boats.
More than 200 different tribes settled on the coasts, plains, jungles, and in the three Andean mountain ranges, each with its own dialect of more than 30 different languages. Today in Colombia, 72 of these tribes and their artifacts still exist.
They weren't master engineers like the Peruvian Incas, nor ferocious warriors like the Mexican Aztecs, nor great architects like the Mayas, but they probably were amongst the best artisans and goldsmiths in the world.
It didn't take long for the word to get out about El Dorado, the legendary city of gold.
Now you and many tens of thousands of others are part of the challenge of a new El Dorado, MUSHAISHA, as the Guajiran Indians call it, the free world's largest known coal reserve. I'm Gilbert Brenson Lazan.
And I'm Luis Angela Velez. We are your TV facilitators for this orientation to the challenges of the new El Dorado, MUSHAISHA, the Cerrejón Coal Project.
Even today, the coastal city of Cartagena bears silent witness of the day when the pirates and the Spanish galleons fought for the right to enslave the city and its gold.
Founded by Don Pedro de Heredia in 1533, the city has a past rich in unusual, picturesque, and historical anecdotes of sieges, prisons, and uprisings.
Touring the city is like returning to that legend which still lives on in the narrow shaded streets, stone walls, museums and churches, all honoring heroic men and legendary figures.
After being ruled by Spain for 300 years, Colombia won its freedom in the Revolution of 1810. The liberator Simón Bolívar established the Republic of Gran Colombia in 1819. Although there have been periods of civil strife, elections have been held regularly, and the military has rarely controlled the democratic government.
Colombia boasts one of Latin America's few democracies. Recently, Dr. Belisario Betancourt Cuartas, widely respected writer, statesman, and diplomat, was elected to a 4-year term, and with him a conservative government after 8 years of liberal rule.
Reflecting Colombia's jovial spirit, Election Day was held without violence and in a festival atmosphere.
Perhaps Colombia is most known for its mountain-grown coffee blends. Coffee is Colombia's principal crop, and she exports 12 million sacks a year to countries all over the world.
The mountainous coffee-growing region offers spectacular scenery, rich vegetation, and warm hospitality by the peasant farmers.
But Colombia is more than a donkey-riding Juan Valdez or the stomping ground of the often exaggerated cocaine cowboys. Industrialization is well advanced in Colombia, as can be seen during the annual International Industrial Fair, drawing representatives from more than 50 countries to buy and sell.
Colombia's capital is Bogotá, a cosmopolitan city of 6 million inhabitants. Bogotá still maintains a formal, traditional, colonial atmosphere in many areas and turns a cliché into reality, a city of contrasts.
This 2-mile-high city with a year-round autumn climate was founded in 1538 by Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada, and it soon became an important center of the new kingdom. Today it is the political, economic, and cultural hub of the nation. The city's rich past, dating back to pre-Columbian times, is filled with legendary figures and is preserved in the numerous museums of modern Bogotá.
Today, this bustling, noisy city is like any other big city of the 20th century. In spite of the many differences found in the different socioeconomic classes, the residents of the interior of Colombia in general, and specifically the Bogotanos, share many basic values, beliefs, and assumptions.
The Bogotanos are very formal in the way they treat others, and tradition plays a big part in their lives, be it religious or historical. While they tend to be reserved and very conscious of the possibility of offending someone, something to be avoided at all costs, once they begin to know someone, they are very hospitable, warm, and friendly. Excessive frankness, direct negation, or open criticism are frequently seen as offensive by a Bogotano.
Loyalty and helpfulness to family and friends are amongst the two most highly valued virtues, frequently misjudged as hypocritical because of his reserved and formal demeanor. The Bogotano is very past-oriented and dedicated to the process of doing things and not necessarily the results. Spiritual values are just as important as material goods for most Bogotanos, and they treat destiny and nature with great awe and respect, and with little desire to try to influence or go against them.
For a variety of historical, religious, and cultural reasons, the Bogotano doesn't generally trust others until they prove themselves trustworthy, something that may require quite a bit of time. At the same time, the Bogotano's wry sense of humor, rich traditions, great hospitality, and cosmopolitan air make him or her a great host and an inimitable friend.
If Bogotá is a living example of tradition and formality, surviving in a modern 20th century city, the contrasts are no less than in the rest of the country. It is doubtful that any other place in the world offers more cultural and scenic variety than Colombia.
Within an hour by air from this capital, a visitor can be sightseeing in the Amazon jungle, tobogganing down a snow-capped Andean peak, bathing off an idyllic Caribbean beach, observing a gigantic cattle drive with the cowboys of the eastern plains, lunching on fresh-caught rainbow trout, exploring one of dozens of world-famous archaeological ruins, or scuba diving off one of Colombia's coasts.
For example, This rugged northern coastline marks the beginning of a tortuous climb, 15,000 feet within a distance of a few miles. Through tropical rainforests up to Colombia's highest peaks, and one of the most exciting archaeological finds of the 20th century, the recently discovered lost city of Buritaca.
This ancient city, constructed deep in a dense rainforest along the Buritaca River, has made archaeologists revise their ideas about pre-Columbian history. Because of its rugged topography, the Tairona Indians had to modify the terrain to satisfy the necessities of their people. They did so constructing terraces and stairways where daily Colombian and foreign anthropologists are discovering axes, gold ornaments, and other artifacts.
And from the adjacent mountain peak, one can see the Lower Guajira mine site of MUSHAISHA, the Cerrejón coal project. This is what will soon be operating.
Now one only sees fertile farmlands, forests, and the first signs of the highway, railroad, and camp constructions on top of 2 billion tons of coal a few yards below the surface.
Barrancas is typical of many of the Lower Guajira's small towns. Once a boom town when cotton was king. Once again when the marijuana boom brought instant riches and distorted the values of an entire country. Now it will soon be the richest per capita town in the world with the royalties from MUSHAISHA.
San Juan del Cesar is the biggest town in the mine area and in the Lower Guajira. It's a thriving town that was also adversely affected by the now-gone boom times and that is planning auxiliary industries and services in order to be part of the Cerrejón coal project. The San Juanero is a proud, tradition-oriented, rugged individualist who is not afraid of hard, dawn-to-dusk labor and not adverse to hard, dusk-to-dawn partying.
Se queda celoso el río Cesar, se queda celoso el río Cesar. Cuando sale la San Juanerita, sus aguas se baten en la villa, pero el barranco las priva, al meterse hasta San Juan.
San Juan del Cesar and its surrounding areas have always been dedicated to ranching. This activity is still its principal economic mainstay, and in many ways, the San Juan rancher brings back memories of the USA cowboy at the turn of the century.
Relatively little farming has survived the droughts that during the last few years wiped out cotton growing as a principal activity, adding to San Juan's economic difficulties.
The life of the inhabitant of this part of Colombia is seen and sung in its unique folk songs called vallenatos, whose vigor and significance are recognized and appreciated throughout the country.
Leaving the Lower Guajira and following the route north, the Middle Guajira immediately causes an impact due to the dramatic topographical changes. The desert begins. 160 kilometers of desert crossed by the highway and railroad that connect the mine to the port. The capital city of the Guajira is Riohacha, a once untamed and violent seacoast town that is now catching up with the 20th century.
Riohacha was once seen as the last outpost of civilization in the Guajiran Peninsula. The road between Riohacha and the Venezuelan border town of Maicao, famous for its commerce, forms an imaginary line across the Middle Guajira that only the most adventurous tourists dared to cross.
But this was before MUSHAISHA. Today, Riohacha, founded in 1545 and the economic center of the Guajira, is experiencing growing pains. A picturesque palm-lined beach is the center of activities, around which are now being constructed many modern buildings, alongside the more traditional homes, churches, and offices.
The Riohachero, strongly influenced by a combination of Spanish, Caribbean, and Indian values, is a fun-loving and complicated soul who believes that life is to be enjoyed and work is a necessary evil in order to do so. In Riohacha, differences of opinion are often settled by physical confrontation.
At the same time, the Riohachero is one of the most hospitable, warm, and open individuals in Colombia, always ready to flow with the tides of life and live the moment.
Artisan handicrafts are important all over Colombia, and Riohacha is no exception. For many Colombians, it's the only means of subsistence.
All up and down the coast of the Guajira, one finds sleepy little fishing villages like this one, Camarones, turned overnight into an emporium of millionaires due to the drug traffic, and once again returned to its abject poverty and desolation with the virtual termination of the marijuana boom. All that's left are the vestiges of dreams that never came true.
The millions earned in one transaction were lost in the next or spent the next morning. Luxurious imported cars often stand idle. There is no money for gasoline. There appears to be no future, only the task of getting through the day.
And yet a few miles away, one sees the first signs of the impact of MUSHAISHA, a thermoelectric plant constructed to utilize part of the coal from Cerrejón.
Moving further north toward the Indian inhabited High Guajira, we reach the northern tip of Colombia, and what will soon be the port of the Cerrejón coal project.
On the way, the traveler encounters the Manauri salt mines, precariously settled between the crystalline blue sea and the mysteriously beautiful desert. A hard people eke an existence out of a hard land. Alongside the commercial development by the big companies, the Indians have formed a cooperative, and each extended family group, according to its caste position and importance, has its portion on which its members still harvest the salt that's left after the evaporation of the ocean water, much as their relatives did centuries ago. It can be well over 100 degrees with a sand-laden wind of 30 knots, and the work goes on.
Further up the coast is the picturesque Cabo de la Vela, where Steve McQueen escaped from Devil Island in the movie Papillon.
Nearby is the fishing village of the same name, where the coastal Guajiran Indians fish and catch lobster and crab for a living. As with almost all the Guajiran Indians, education is a family affair. Caste and tribal traditions, work, artisan skills, and folklore pass from mother to daughter and from father to son.
These coastal Indians are among the privileged. They have food, they have water, they have work, and they have health. But they only represent a very small percentage of the estimated 300,000 Guajiran Indians that roam the Colombian and Venezuela portions of the peninsula.
Half Moon Bay, a few months ago, a barren bit of nowhere, inhabited only by smugglers of contraband electronic and household goods, whose trucking to Maicao is the principal source of income for many Guajiran mestizos, the half-breeds that speak some Spanish. Soon this will be the biggest port in South America.
And to the middle of this desolation comes MUSHAISHA and the 20th century.
The industrialization process of this immense richness has made El Cerrejón the most important project in Colombia's economic history. Perhaps what is most important is that this project involves the environmental and social transformation of the Guajiran Peninsula, where agriculture and ranching have become almost impossible.
Witnesses to this change are the Guajiran Indians, nomads who used to open highways or holes for keeping rainwater on which they lived. They now follow step by step the progress of the bulldozers that move sandy soils, transforming them into roads and airports.
Progress will definitely alter the small settlements occupied by these strong, matriarchal, and frequently warring clans. And this indigenous group is unlikely to be able to preserve some of its 1,000-year-old traditions. On the other hand, great progress will be made by the Guajirans in other fields, thanks to El Cerrejón.
The Guajiran villages or rancherias are formed by groups of extended families that are separated over a distance of 3 or more kilometers between each other.
Unlike the vast majority of Indian tribes in the world, the Guajiran tribe has been able to maintain its individuality and centuries-old customs in spite of its contact with Western civilizations. The Guajirans have adopted goat raising as a principal method of subsistence, first introduced by the Spaniards.
They have used some Western clothing, firearms, jewelry, pots and pans, tools, food and drinks. They have not generally adopted Western laws, religion, or the Spanish language. Their own unique legal system religious beliefs and language are very, very different from those of the rest of Colombia.
According to storytellers, war between the various tribes was common in the life of the Guajirans. They made the points of lances and arrows with the bone from the tail of the manta ray, to which they applied poison. Although the fights have somewhat diminished, they are still common. The rifle, revolver, and knife are used for personal defense and give the Guajiran considerable personal prestige.
The Guajirans use a drum for a dance locally known as the chichamaya, which is announced by the witch doctor with the object of curing someone or making it rain.
The Guajiran dress shows the adaptation to certain Western products while using their own native objects. This is true for men and women alike. It is said that puberty marks the time when the Guajiran girl can begin to use the manta, which is a colorful woman's dress that covers from head to foot.
Both men and women are tattooed with the name or mark of the tribe on their forearm or thigh. They use the thorn of the cactus to puncture the skin. Then they rub the arm or thigh with charcoal.
In spite of the erroneous stereotype of violent savage, reinforced by the Guajiran's hard lifestyle and basic distrust of the Arihuna, the non-Indian, the Guajiran family welcomes visitors who know how to follow their very formal greeting rituals. The woman is the leader in the Guajiran society and is always to be respected, and from a distance. Indians in many little coastal towns, such as this one, Puerto Estrella, derive their only income from fishing and the occasional contraband boats that arrive to be unloaded and whose merchandise is brought across the desert to Maicao.
The interior town of Nazareth, the only oasis in the Guajiran desert, boasts a government nursery school and a mission grade school and high school, the only ones in the High Guajira where Indian students live and learn not only reading and writing, but also learn their native crafts, skills, and folklore.
This is the Guajira's answer to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The only roadway in the Upper Guajira is a labyrinth of 1,000 miles of crisscrossing sand paths called trochas that are usually washed out during the 1 or 2 rainfalls per year.
Only a few, however, have vehicles. Most depend on mules to carry their worldly possessions during their nomadic wanderings.
This is a luxury in the Guajira, one of the few abundant water holes on the peninsula, and everyone uses it for almost everything.
Nevertheless, the administrative heart of this multi-billion-dollar 20-year Cerrejón project, MUSHAISHA, is not located either in Bogotá or in the Guajira, but rather in Colombia's second largest and most fun-loving city, Barranquilla.
In contrast to colonial Cartagena, traditional Bogotá, and the rugged deserts of the Guajira, Barranquilla confirms any stereotype of a Caribbean port city.
Located at the mouth of the Magdalena River, next to one of South America's most important and unique wildlife reserves, Salamanca Park, where one finds more species of wildlife per square mile than anywhere else in the world, is the port and city of Barranquilla. Barranquilla does not boast a long and noble ancestry, but with over 1 million inhabitants, it is proud to have been founded by settlers from Galapa, and of its once influential port and pier in Puerto Colombia that attracted immigrants from all over the world who have accelerated its unbelievable growth and at the same time given it a variety of shades and tones that make it so unforgettable.
Barranquilla opened a number of new horizons for Colombia when in 1823 the government granted Juan Elbers the right to navigate the Magdalena River, the most important transportation route into the interior of Colombia. Paradoxically, Barranquilla itself later condemned river travel to extinction.
When regular seaplane routes were begun from there in the 20s, navigation on the Magdalena dwindled to a mere memory. Barranquilla was a world pioneer of commercial aviation, and it's still a center of vital importance in the economy of the country, particularly because of its new port and advanced industrialization.
This city starts off each year with lively Mardi Gras type carnival, which includes a colorful Battle of the Flowers and the participation of the entire population of the city with their traditional music groups, popular music contests, and dusk to dawn nightlife.
Near Barranquilla, Nobel laureate Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born in the little town of Aracataca, on whose people and legends he based his now world-famous works, 100 Years of Solitude, The Autumn of the Patriarch, and others.
Like many other tropical people, Barranquilla's residents are informal. They like to dance, play and watch sports, and enjoy themselves. Most of the time they are smiling and being happy. They are open and friendly in the way they treat each other and strangers. They strongly believe that men are more capable and rational than women, and therefore make the majority of decisions and generally do what they want to. This is changing, however, but not as fast as many people, especially women, would like.
The costeño is oriented to the present moment. Time is to be used here and now, and he seldom worries about past or the future. He generally believes that many people can be trusted, and this can be noticed in his frank behavior with others. But at the same time, he is quite suspicious about people from the interior part of Colombia, especially from Bogotá, the Cachaco, as he calls them.
Although the Catholic religious influence is relatively diminished on the coast, the costeño does believe that man's destiny is almost totally dependent upon external factors. For that reason, it is frequently seen that one will accept whatever happens as unavoidable and unchangeable.
Today, Barranquilla boasts schools, cultural activities, medical facilities, recreational and sports programs, universities and shopping centers that rank amongst the best in the country. Near Barranquilla is Puerto Colombia, this region's first and now abandoned port, with what was once the world's largest pier, 3 kilometers long. Weekends are for fun in Puerto Colombia with mini carnivals, music, cumbia, local spirits, fresh seafood, and more.
This beach at Salgar is a favorite gathering spot. And of course, the dances. More than just a dance, almost a way of life.
Into this cultural melting pot, representing many diametrically opposed and culturally determined values, beliefs, and assumptions, enters another element, the North American. Really, to speak of the North American would be as great an oversimplification as to speak of only one Colombian culture, and you've already seen that that would be an error.
To one degree or another, however, most North Americans, be they professionals or laborers, do maintain basic historical and cultural values of individualism, achievement, a pioneer spirit, and what is almost a reverence for change. Here's a bird's eye look at some North Americans' roots.
When I was growing up, we were taught to hide our feelings, to stuff them down. Now today, the young people are expressing themselves. They're honest, they're open, they're trying to find the answers, and I think nothing but good can come from this.
This spot here, the Valley Forge, is a reminder for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren of how our country has suffered from the beginning to win its freedom and peace. Many times I come here when it's real cold and colder than what it is today, I mean, and you wonder how those people had the heart and the courage to withstand that for what they believed was right.
I lived for 61 years now. My dad, he started to work in the mine when he was 12 years old, picking slate in the breakers as a laborer. The only thing was farming, and the farmers couldn't make a living the way it was, you know. And so most of the farm boys came out to work in the coal mines.
I went in the mines when I was 15, and it was great stuff. In the mines, I drove mules, 3-mule team. My God, you don't want to know the names of the mules, I guess. No. You better take John for a while. How long did you work there, John?
I was 13 years old. I started working in number 8.
Oh, I started in the mines when I was 15 years old and worked at number 10 for 40-some years. And talk about hard times. Why, certainly we had hard times. And we had a lot of good times, too. Pay night was a great good time around the mines. Holy gee whiz.
Well, you got 2 days.
You're right, John. But talk about hard times. I remember why you couldn't open your shoes for the molasses was on the shoelaces. You know what I mean? Because that's all you had was bread and molasses for when the strikes was on and everything else. We had strikes for a good many years, and talk about hard times.
Them days, there was no relief. There wasn't anything. The only thing, you went and you picked a ton of cola, you sold it to the farmer, and you got a bag of potatoes and some cabbage, and that's how you lived.
In them days, it was all the little stores. And we used to get tick. Well, tick is, they mark it on the book. They'd keep you from one payday to another payday. The little stores that helped us through the strikes, they would keep you going, you know what I mean?
They were still neighbors and all, so they would help one another.
That's right, John. Your neighbors are all beautiful, wonderful to help each other out. Now in the city, you don't have any of that, sure not. But we really have that around here yet.
You get used to it, being a miner's wife. I had 5 children and I was busy. When our boys started, there was fear, sure, but you get used to it. Once they knew the job and protect themselves, you get used to it. Oh, I cleaned a lot of coal dirt. That's the only bad thing. I'd get mad about it sometimes, but you put up with it.
Here in this section of the country, the whole thing is based on who your ancestors were, particularly the main line. The main line, that's what they live on. They live on their family background and social register. And if you're not in that, you're out. Our people use horses for plowing, not to ride. My people all work for a living.
We have passed the eras of J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller only because they came into being at a time when we were just beginning to grow, to exist as a country. So that type of opportunity has passed. Therefore, we in effect have to be more inventive and create new opportunities for that type of success. We really have to have the perception to look beyond the growth we have achieved, whether it's in science, in technology, in education, in every aspect of life. In order to have goals, in order to have things to look forward to in life, we have to look beyond the obvious.
It's honorable. Any work is honorable. Shoveling manure in the fields is honorable. If you can handle it mentally, I mean, if you're that kind of a person, there's nobility to work if you're honest with your work. If you do a good job and you feel good about doing a good job, no matter what it is, then it's honorable. If you care about what you're doing, then you reflect this caring with everything you do, with the food you prepare, with the way you dress, with the way you look, with the way you live.
We sort of have a great sort of relationship between the fireman and the engineer. We're just sort of up there entertaining ourselves and making sure everything's going the way it should. And it's sort of a thrill in a way. It's something that not everyone gets to do now since they've been eliminated by the diesels.
And in my spare time, if I find any time, I try to sing until the fireman fills my pockets with coal.
Well, I believe the man that punches the clock in the final analysis has more liberty. He knows what he's going to do every day. And when his days off, his days are off, then he's off, see? For the farmer, you know, you never know what's going to happen.
When you do get a crop, you don't know what price you're going to be getting for it when you go to sell it. But all in all, I guess it's just something that drives you towards this way of making a living.
So I guess it's that desire for freedom and liberty, you know, and not being tied down to somebody else's routine.
Well, this is predominantly Pennsylvania Dutch, but you don't hear a kid in this town or anywhere around talk Dutch anymore. It's just our generation that can talk it anymore. The old days, they had more discipline, and there's too damn much freedom now, too much news media, too much instant information. Everybody gets everybody excited, uptight, frustrated. That's what my wife said, too damn much news. We'd be better off if we didn't know so much.
The philosophy among this generation, as I see it, is rather stagnant. It is only what they want to do today and what pleasure they can derive from it.
I think it all depends upon how young people are given an example by the older people who bring them up. I think that's what makes the difference.
You're interested in history because it gives us some identity. Who are we and what do we stand for? Are we a democracy and do we live up to what we say? So preserving architecture in the countryside and so forth gives us some identity. Although there's a fellow that was just here from Denmark, a friend of mine, and I said, this building is 150 years old, and he laughed because he said, we got buildings in Denmark that go back to 900. I said, well, yeah, but for us, 150 years is old. Remember, we're a young country, and we can be just as proud of a 150-year-old building here that we preserved as the Danes can of something that's back to 900. See, it's an all relative idea, don't you think?
Some of us are very difficult to get to know, especially the older ones. But beneath their aloofness, there's heart, there's warmth.
On the back of the program schedule, it gives you a lineup of the rules and regulations that we would like you folks to comply with during the weekend stay here at this first annual Mountain Springs Bluegrass Festival.
People have their values, whether they're from the city or the country, but it's maybe a little easier to have better values in the country than it is in the city. You don't have so many temptations, I guess.
For me, the country is 2 days to fall apart, and that's it. After 2 days, I've had it. I've had the birds, and I've had the grass, and I've had the solitude, and I love the anonymity of the city. There's a problem for me in suburban and country living. Having the neighbors and being with the neighbors is terrific, except it would drive me crazy that everybody would know where I am and what I'm doing every minute that I'm going and doing it.
We have survived some of the hardships, and we have enjoyed many of the good things. I count myself very fortunate being a part of the heritage here.
MUSHAISHA throws them all. From Bogota and the interior of the country, from Barranquilla and other coastal regions, from all kinds of backgrounds from the United States, from the lower, middle, and upper Guajira, 7 clearly different cultures and subcultures, and 3 different languages.
Much has been said about the technological challenge of the Cerrejón coal project, what will soon be the world's largest open-pit mine. A computer-controlled mining operation of 3,500 tons per hour, a 160-kilometer railroad carrying 93 100-ton coal cars across the desert at 100 kilometers per hour, a port storing and loading facility with a 10,000-ton per hour capacity, a 7-story maintenance facility the size of 8 football fields, the construction of 2 cities out of nowhere to accommodate tens of thousands of employees, support personnel, and their families. But as you have now seen, this immense technological challenge cannot overshadow the challenge of the human element and of successful transcultural interface by means of generative communication skills. In fact, the former will just not be possible without the latter.